So good to be back with everybody. Thank you for showing up.
Yes. And today we're going to talk more about the universal laws. You know, I'm coming at this from a completely novice perspective. I have no clue much about these laws other than what I've heard in books a little bit. But it's never like an exploration into them or how they affect my life. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today and share with y'all. This is just part one. We'll talk about some of these laws, and then next week, same time, we'll go into a little bit more.
We're going to be speaking about the metaphysical
aspects.
The universal laws from that metaphysical aspect today. You know, there are natural laws, and like the law of gravity, blah blah blah.
Right.
You know, there's that, and we often have been talking about the different templates of how to view things and what we need to access and be aware of if we're going to be operating right from a place of integrity and right-mindedness.
Okay. Yeah. And these are 12 laws that you've studied, and they just kind of apply to how to live more in integrity and fulfill.
How to live differently, right? And to recognize that every word we say, every thought we have, every action we take is having consequences out there.
Yeah.
Right? Whether we think about them having consequences or not. I think often when we feel like things are just happening to us and the world is running us over, right? Some of those laws are being denied, or we're in opposition to them. They're very relevant and build upon one another.
Okay. So the first law, universal law, is the law of divine oneness. So do you want to talk about kind of what that looks like?
Yeah, that's like where we're waking up today and realizing that everything here is a being.
Okay.
Right? And everything here is interconnected and dependent on one another.
Okay.
And humanity has been operating outside of that, right? There's not been a recognition that our plants can sing, and they have a lot to tell us.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff coming out about how much plants know and communicate and, essentially have that network that we're so far away from, it feels like.
So far away from.
Yeah.
Right? And, the animals have that too. And there's this whole cycle that it's all operating within.
Yeah.
And we're standing over here trying to be God.
Okay.
Right?
When you say we're standing over here trying to be God, can you
Well,
say
we're trying to control nature.
Yeah. Right?
We're trying to control the animals that are here.
Yeah.
Animals are going extinct. We've been messing with the natural laws.
Right.
For a really long time.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So is there in some of this, say this law of divine oneness, is there a practical approach to that, or it's just that it's there and that you should try to connect with whatever's out there, or what is that?
Well, I think the more we come into integrity, the less that becomes a try.
Okay.
Because anytime we're trying, we're not going to succeed. Right? So it's more about being, being out at the river and letting your mind empty.
Yeah.
To the point that you can get out of your templates of thought and see what's around you.
Okay.
Right? And recognize the energy, because you can see it if you try. Well, you try. Back to
there you go.
You can see it if you empty.
Okay.
Right? The energy of the trees and the energy in the plants. And, if you sit and talk to a plant, we can recognize that it is going to flourish.
Right.
Right? That connection is there. It's just that we're not interacting with it most often.
Yeah. That's something so random. This morning, even my Spotify gave me a notification what kind of music do you think the plants would want to listen to? It was a poll. And apparently they like to listen to hardcore metal music. They grow faster. So things like that. It's they're interacting with us, and we're not realizing that we do have an impact on them and them to us. We're not allowing that space for them to affect us often. We're just affecting, doing what we want to do instead of
and trying to and everything, you know, on the planet's been trying to conform to us,
right,
rather than us being a part.
Yes, and us listening. So part of that oneness is
and
listening.
It's also the water molecule.
Okay.
Right? We go back to the masters and that interchange of, quote, God is what it was called back then, source, creator, whatever, and the water molecule.
Okay.
Right? That water molecule is in everything. And we know there's science behind the fact that our words can affect that.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
Right? So if we're like in our house screaming, our plants are going to be affected by that too. And
let
so
alone
is
the other
nature.
people in the house.
And the animals and the birds around your house and
Yeah.
the trees around your house. So in that divine oneness, we have to take a very personal responsibility for the condition of our planet.
Okay.
Right? Because we are what's causing the disaster.
Right, and we are kind of those carriers, the light holders for us to continue to have this nature experience. And really we're saying, you know, nature, but like anything that's not us. Like we want to be able to continue this, and we're holding the torch for that and kind of falling short. So, you know, maybe stepping into that idea is not like, you know, that circle. I always come back to a circle. Like when I think of divine oneness, it's like, you know.
It's like the tribe.
Okay.
So when you think about the Native Americans, there still is a respect for everything here. An ultimate respect.
Yes.
And a grace around what the earth was given.
Right.
And there was always a giving back.
Yes.
We don't give back.
Right.
And we don't.
And we take more than what we need too.
Well, yeah, and we get all of our food from the grocery store, so there's no concept around like
the oneness. That our food, it's all part of a system that gets to us and reciprocates.
Yeah, and then it's going to reseed and feed us again. You know what I mean? And I guess when I was in Mexico, I was blown away by the fact that I did not feel hunger there.
Okay.
I did not feel that. Like, I felt like you could walk out your door and pick something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? And it was always giving back.
Right.
It's like now, like in the United States, like organic means it has poo on it. And ooh, should I even eat that?
Yeah.
Right? Which is so counter to what is necessary for our
Yes. I could go into that heavy.
Yeah, right?
Maybe that's on a different day.
Well, that divine oneness, but that's
it is,
but behind every one of these laws, there is like a root system that like should be our foundation.
Yeah.
For being able to operate, because we live in isolation.
Right.
Right? We don't live in oneness.
Yes.
We don't have community anymore.
Right.
Right? Our families like are all like spread out. Like that space of connectiveness
is what we're missing.
Yes. Across everything.
Okay. So that's the first law, because I feel like you've got to establish that principle at least and know that that's the goal, maybe?
Yeah, is that we have to connect with everything here.
Okay.
We're affecting everything.
Okay.
Moment to moment.
Well, so that leads us into the second, which is the law of vibration. So that's, everything's in a state of motion and vibration.
Well, and in our world today, we're talking a lot about frequency.
Yeah.
Right? And again, as humans, we're trying to control frequency rather than becoming a part of frequency.
Right.
Right? And falling into the nature, the frequency of our earth.
Right.
And what's growing here. Right? And instead, we're trying, pushing up.
Right.
Right? Even, in our technology and everything, that frequency and everything is getting higher and higher, which is giving people a lot of anxiety. And I do believe it's because we're out of alignment with what is natural.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And that natural vibration and the even other people. I think that's interesting too. Like, don't other people give off like this vibration energy. And so,
well, we're adopting what is becoming common.
okay.
Right? Because energy is always finding balance. So it's hard to even go into nature and feel it
Right.
in the same way as we used to be able to.
Yeah.
Because humanity and this high level frequency is like filtering.
That's not just with the frequency of nature. We're also that's their vibration is affecting us. Like people always say, like, you know, you want to get to that next level of vibration, higher vibration is what you hear. And that's kind of what you talked about. But like, I think people say that to mean like a higher, you know, not this negative goo that is trauma.
That's what they're talking about.
So they want to rise up above that, and that does severely affect our emotions, our well-being, depending on how often you're around these people, or, you know, nature or not nature, or, you know, so all these different vibrations are coming in, and
a lot of our people are highly sensitive people.
Yeah.
And just in that by itself, without 1 ounce of trauma,
yeah.
it needs a lot of alone time
Right.
in nature. Right? Because we need to be able to empty our minds out and be, you know, in that natural frequency. And the more we are, the more we can hold it when
Right.
we go out in the chaos.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Right? So even, you know, as we're working with the plant music, right? And you know, Vera singing to the 432.
Yeah.
Right? And having that just going in the environment all the time, right? When you go out into nature, that anxiety, it takes longer to filter through.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? Now, and I find that the anxiety drops. Our bodies weren't really meant to vibrate that high.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think even like you talked about energy in motion. Emotion is energy in motion. So does that kind of fill into this same concept too of vibration and the law of vibration? Like, is our emotions factored into that?
Well, because like an interaction, yeah, because like the interaction creates a vibration, right? Usually your body responds after somebody speaks.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes a little bit after, right? Because it has to filter through your system.
Yeah.
And it triggers one of those motion detectors within our field, right? And then it's like, bing, bing, there you go. There it is.
So you're saying part of that is, creating that stronger barrier around you.
Right. Because once we're in a state of wholeness and our field is, we're aware of how our field is set up, right, then we have a lot more control over how our physical body is going to react to that.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we're vulnerable, our physical body is going to have a much larger reaction.
Yes.
Which is going to spill the emotions out and cause a bigger disruption than when we start.
Yeah. Well, I'm even thinking, like, don't they use like vibration in medical and spiritual? Like, what is that? Like,
the tuning fork.
The tuning forks. Like, what is that? I know that they're a thing, but I don't really know what it is and how it affects. Is that, you know?
Well, when they tune, like, now how a doctor uses it, I'm not a doctor. But, you know, often like an orchestra will tune to the oboe.
Okay.
And like the note A.
Okay.
Is considered the universal note
of
like the sound of the universe. So it is interesting often if a person is in anguish or, you know, crying, or like that A note is what comes childbirth.
Interesting.
You know, it's the universal sound, right? And it came through me at one point when I was in New Mexico, and I was like, okay, the A, right? And then I was talking to a musician, and I was like, I keep hearing this A note, and she connected all that for me.
Okay.
And I'm like, so what note is this? And I said, because this is the note that wants to come out of me when I'm in anguish.
Okay.
And she goes, that's an A.
Okay.
Right? So I've recognized in my many dealings with people in anguish that if we can get them to let it ring out, it's an automatic tuning of our system.
Yeah.
Right? So if I can get people to go sing, and I try, right? I'll be like, just go in the bathroom. Whatever comes out of your mouth, like get in the shower and do it. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter, right? Like whatever it is. But if you just like let it ring out, it's kind of like when you get like a highly sensitive person gets overstimulated, they want to scream.
Yeah.
Right? So turning that scream into something productive.
Right. That makes sense.
And getting that in the right note to have a reaction through our whole system is important.
Part of that vibration.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so the third one is the law of correspondence. What does that mean to you? This is like as above, so below, within and without. So we've talked about that in some of our dealings, but I had no clue.
Yeah,
as above, so below was a universal
That's
law.
Why I talk about Jesus a lot. You're going to see him in a lot of this because he understood them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if we are going to, putting all the religious goo aside, he understood universal law. Okay. And I mean, when I was studying with Chopra and I'd hear these quantum physicists, they're constantly referring to Jesus.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was blown away. It was like a whole different concept of him and the level of knowingness that he had access to.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So that as above, so below, anything we have here, there is an energetic duplicate. Okay. Right? And we can watch our science trying to duplicate those things over and over again.
Okay.
Like, what is the internet?
What do you mean?
The internet is like a universal, quote, source.
Okay.
Right? And source is like the ocean of information.
Okay.
Right? Now, that ocean of information, we can interact with the sharks or we can interact with the dolphins. It's our choice. That's why we have freedom of choice.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So in understanding ourselves, right, as above, so below, we're understanding that, that energetic duplicate of what we have here, what the trees have. That is a piece that we deny in our one-dimensional thought, right? Of like, here we are, this is what we do, I go to work, I do, we're not recognizing that space within ourselves.
As within, so without.
So, like our interactions with people, like we have to recognize that there is an aspect of that within us, right? So when we're seeing something we don't like, often it's because it's
in
an image of what is within ourselves.
Okay.
Now, when I was studying with Deepak, like one thing I admired about him so much is his use of his own personal flaws or our personal struggles into integrity. Like he used those and spoke about them, right? He never claimed to be above anyone. Okay. And I always respected that, right? And, he would be like, I'd be at a signing and like a woman would come up and like, just like, be asking me questions and all the things. And I can feel myself getting frustrated and like, she ended up saying something to him. Like, because he's kind of an open book, and she said something like, well, it seems that you're very frustrated with me, and that doesn't feel very spiritual, blah, 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 right? So he walks away and goes to his wife, do I act like that? And she goes, yeah.
Okay.
And he goes, well, okay, like I have to look at that.
Okay.
I have to look at that. I have to look at how I'm showing up and how people are interacting with me and what I'm bringing to the table in those situations. And, say we have a person in our lives that we have a difficulty communicating with.
Okay.
And we're constantly blowing up. right? Often there's an aspect of ourselves within that other person that we're in combat with.
Okay. I kind of get that. Yeah, I mean, I understand that as far as the, law, like, so say like that's as
we're going to
above, so
attract
below.
what we need to fix.
So that's kind of the main thought of that without the saying some of those are just like words.
I think
to
we're
me,
going
but,
to attract what we need to work on.
Okay. So it's even like in what we've been talking about in our work, a lot of people, that are watching this probably are healers. They might be, psychics. Everybody's a healer in our perspective. And so that journey, a lot of people that have trauma and are healers, they're trying to fix in the world what they see to be wrong, and usually that needs help, and usually that's a reflection of their internal struggles that they're dealing with. So that's kind of a good way that I think of it. Yeah. So, but in everyday life, like what would that look like for somebody just wanting to have this, experience with that as above, so below? Like, is that like an everyday thing, or is that more general?
It's like reflection? It settles in, and becomes just a part of who we are. Right? Because in that recognition that, right, we can start recognizing and being interactive with our energy systems.
Okay.
We can start being interactive, like with, I used to go out to the river and there were so many orbs of energy out there. Like it was, it's not the same right now.
Yeah.
But I would go out there and just, being able to sit and interact with that level of energy.
Yeah.
Right? That is oneness, right?
Okay.
That's when the animals start coming.
Yeah.
We are here with all that is. Right? And
so
the master, when he said the kingdom is here, that's what he's saying. Once we reach that divine oneness with everything here, we're not in resistance.
Yeah.
Now, we may be in resistance to the chaos of that.
Yeah.
And that's something to recognize as well.
Yeah, I think it is just part of that pattern and reflection is this law of correspondence, and being able to recognize those. So that I feel like we're leading into the fourth, which is the law of attraction. So that's they kind of overlap in my mind a little bit.
Well, they all work together. That's why we're starting from the top. You can't just do one.
Yeah, okay.
And it work or have any sort of impact that we are thinking we want to have. And often with the law of attraction, we're making these statements of what we want.
Okay.
And our inner self does not necessarily support that.
Okay.
So doubt is around, and doubt is the negator of our magic.
Right.
Right? Now, the law of attraction also bleeds into the law of giving and receiving, right? So that law of attraction, if we're always taking,
okay,
right, and never giving, right? Random giving is like the highest escalator of the law of attraction.
What do you mean highest escalator? Like it propels more good things into your life if you give, essentially.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Without the thought of getting something
That's why
back.
There was tithing in the beginning.
Okay, so that's
why, that it's like a wheel. So, if you're in line at Starbucks and you buy somebody 5 people back a coffee, or you're, and we're in that space of rotation. Now the law of attraction, that's getting a lot of play.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of disgruntled people around it because it doesn't, quote, work. Well, it doesn't work if we're not in divine oneness, if we're not recognizing that that what our inner thought process is around that. Are we waking up in the middle of the night desperate about money and then calling money in? The desperation is overriding the energy going into calling in the money.
Yeah, because I feel like that even calling it in, you're doing it in desperation. So
Right.
it's like calling more desperation, because that's the true like emotion fueling that call.
That call, exactly.
Right, okay.
So, us really being straight up with ourselves is how we use these laws intentionally.
Okay.
Right? Because if we're just walking around saying affirmations and our inner dialogue
Yeah.
is completely counter to that, we're going to be frustrated.
Right.
Right?
Because then it doesn't feel good saying the affirmation anyway. It's like, yes, I'm filled with X, Y, Z. And then you go into your daily life and you're like, well, this isn't freaking true.
Yeah,
and it's like,
I'm not filled with anything except for frustration. Right?
So that kind of changes the words, even because I do think affirmations can have, a mantra, whatever you want to call them, they can have that powerful benefit, but like, yeah, they're not going to work and they're going to feel fake and feel like, yeah, I'm not going to be happy.
And I think when we land on the right affirmation, like, the other work has to be done as well.
Yeah.
Like we have to be in wholeness
right.
for an affirmation to matter. We have to be in a place where, we're aware of our programming, our inner dialogue, and are in a conscious state of
right.
change around that, right? So once that order is attained
okay.
through our astral body, through time, for those that have PTSD or CPTSD, right? That has to be the first step for anything else to matter, because we're just trying to survive at that point.
Yeah.
And when we're in survival, we really are thinking about ourselves. We have to.
And
right?
so you might be able to make a little bit of traction, but that's kind of why things continue to fall apart, is because it's not actually attracting the things that would cause the most like momentum.
When we're moving into a state of wholeness, right, we have to recognize if we have big chunks out of our foundation of our house is going to be in jeopardy.
Right.
Right? And that's how those of us with CPTSD or PTSD have been living, with chunks missing. Right? And when that is put back together, right, then we can really start utilizing affirmations. Now they have to be the right ones.
That's exactly my next question. It's like, wait, but what if they're they're not calling in the right thing because you're out of integrity? And so that's maybe why it's not working too.
There's all that, but as you're working through that process, especially in our 90-day program, like you're really moving into a space of integrity. So through the whole time that we're creating wholeness, we're building that foundation of new thought as well.
Yeah.
For that integrity to have a place to grow from.
Right.
Right?
Well, I think even just like the openness around, like I did read the Game of Life and How You Play It, Florence Scovel Shinn, and like part that never occurred to me that like in an affirmation or calling what I want to leave space for it to actually manifest as something different than what I thought. So like something bigger. So it's like, if you're calling for something very specific, like, oh, I want this person to do whatever. I want this person in my life or this amount of money. It's like, maybe we just need to call for enough money or, an equal result.
Well, we live in a world where witchcraft is really looked down upon, and half of what you said would be casting spells.
Okay.
Right? Because we have no power over another human being.
Right.
We have no right to state a claim that is going to require manipulation of another person's wants.
Okay.
Right? So in our, quote, Christian society, we have to recognize that. We're casting spells all the time with stuff like that.
Right.
Right? And it backfires on us.
Yeah, right. Well, like, if you're sitting there going, oh, I want this partner. I want this person to ask me to marry them or whatever it is. Or I want this house. Like, maybe you call for just the right person, the right house, instead of this specific thing. And then it's going to actually attract maybe and open your mind to if another opportunity shows up. Because if something else shows up for you and it wasn't exactly what you thought it would be, you might not be as open in this law of attraction if you were very closed-minded about it. So
right, like if I were gonna guide someone around words for finding a partner,
Okay.
I would claim finding a partner.
Yes.
Because a partner, like that word, signifies balance.
Right.
It signifies compromise.
Yeah.
Right? It signifies each person holding up their side of the bargain.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So within that, I would then say, all right, we need somebody that's going to be compatible with your love language.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe pull in a few characteristics.
Yeah.
That we would like to see. But that word choice of a partner is a completely different
it's a different space. Yeah. It calls for something different.
It calls for something different.
Yeah, than just being married or having a husband or having a, you know, it's like it might not be a good one if that's what you're calling for.
I want to get married. Okay, so now you're married and you're in a shitty marriage, right? That's different. With anything, we want to have an array of opportunity.
Yes.
Right? Anything in our lives.
Yes.
Right? So why would we marry the first person that, quote, says they love us?
Okay, right. But yeah, I find the law of attraction, like that's the one I pretty much know out of any of these, and it still feels like I'm learning so much
because
about it.
we're, you know, it's often these kind of things are brought to us like independent of anything around it and kind of at face value.
Okay.
And there's a lot of disappointed people out there going law of attraction.
Yeah.
Right? Because we weren't giving the foundation for how to use it.
Yes.
And here's the thing, it's at play all the time.
Yeah. Right.
Right? So the way we word things is super important.
Right. So it's an everyday.
It's
all
just,
of these are everyday laws to.
They're all happening all the time.
Yeah.
It's just like gravity. Like, you know.
You can't escape it.
Yeah, if something falls on your head, like you're going to get, you know, a concussion. And then you're like, oh, there's gravity. We don't walk around recognizing it.
Yeah, okay.
So these are at play all the time. The more conscious we are of their play.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying? The more conscious we are that they are operating, the more consciously we can walk through that successfully.
Okay.
Because it's happening anyway. Right? So we think we're using the law of attraction by saying something nice and then walking around saying a bunch of mean things all the time.
Yeah.
Like that.
Or like stalking on Instagram or doing whatever. It's like you don't even have to say it, but like the actions that you're taking are calling something else.
Yeah. So it's completely negated.
Yeah.
Right? You know, and when we're choosing words for those affirmations, it's kind of like choosing words for Google. If you've got this humongous long thing that you can't even remember when you get done with it, it's not working.
Right.
Right? You want to hone that down to like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Set it.
I want this. Calling in this, essentially. Yeah. Okay. Well, that kind of leads into this 5th law, which is the law of inspired action. So that's
again,
taking inspired actions towards your goals and desires.
And that's a piece, right, in our work that, you know, with the spirituality the way it is, we think that we can just say it and it should just be dropped at our doorstep.
Yeah.
And no, there has to be divine action. Yes. Right? That's why we sit down and go out to nature and sit down and say, what is my next right move?
Right.
If you're in a tangled situation, what is my next right move? Because most of the time what we do is spend all of our energy around what everybody else should have done differently.
Yeah.
Which makes the situation bigger and bigger and bigger. And Deepak said just yesterday, every time we interact in one of those, we are tangling ourselves in that person's karma. Mm. So do not walk around talking about other people's problems, and don't walk around talking to everybody about yours.
Right.
You're tangling karma, and our world has guided us right into that.
Yeah.
Right? What do? You sit down and interact with somebody and they're going to tell you their worst thing that happened to them, like right up front.
Right? Yeah, even like as empaths, like we usually absolutely scoop up all the thoughts, feelings, and emotions and carry them as they're ours for other people, and that's dangerous too. So like that inspired action could even be healing yourself, right? And then
divine, here's what I would say. If somebody said, right, I want a partner that meets these expectations,
okay,
then I would sit with them and say, so what do you have to change within yourself to be in alignment for that?
okay,
Because what you're attracting is this.
okay,
Right? So what needs to change within you?
right,
So that, and what needs to change in your action? You got to put yourself with a different group of people.
right.
You've got to put yourself in different situations.
Yeah.
What do you like to do? Oh, well, I like to go sit at the bar. Well, if you're sitting at the bar, you're probably going to meet that kind of person.
Yeah, that's what I was just even thinking. If you're going, oh, I want somebody that's really fun and outgoing, maybe you need to take a dance class. Because if you're sitting in your house all the time, that person isn't going to be the answer to your, oh, well, I'm just waiting for somebody to drag me out the house. It's like, no, you're not going to even find that person unless you take the inspired action to do something different.
And often, like with our clients, like we get that wholeness in place and all these fragments have been pulled back in 5, 6, 8, 10, right? And we have to discover what we like again.
Yeah, right.
Right? We have to discover, right, what is going to bring us joy. Because even when we're like, see ourselves as a good person, when we've gone through a ton of trauma, our inner compass is not true north. Maybe we may be northeast or,
right,
and we think that we are.
And that's because our perspective is distorted from having this
all
trauma.
the trauma.
Yeah.
Right? And the way our brain is operating and the templates of thought that we're operating within.
Yeah.
Right? So, in that process of coming true north, that's what every one of these laws is about, is becoming fully realized. Being fully realized is operating real time.
Yes.
Right? Our brain is operating real time, and we're not operating from a state of emotional pull.
Yeah. No, I think even just like as we've broken down, these are just 5 that we went through. It's like, yeah, it almost gives you more purpose, and that people will always want to be present. That's just been top of mind for everybody we've talked to, that presence, that real-time awareness. And so it just gives you that sense of like, okay, this is going to get me there, because I know that if I'm set up right and all these things, that I can actually get the life that I want. So that's kind of, I feel like it is just, yeah,
it's just like, we have to have a elementary understanding of our body to keep it operating,
Right.
And these laws are happening anyway.
Okay.
So we think we're like going, okay, it's just like, okay, you're breathing anyway.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried not to?
Yeah. So it's right.
Really, so these laws are happening anyway, and they are dictating your life.
That is true.
They are formulating your life. Mm-hmm. So unless we're aware of how they're formulating our lives, we don't know how to do anything different. Right? And I think that is what we need to embody.
That's perfect.
They're happening anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I'm going to engage the law of attraction.
Yeah.
That's why it doesn't work.
Right. Okay.
See what I'm saying? We're always in
It's like a program always running in the universe.
Always running.
Yeah. And so it's deciding to play the game by the rule and going, this is how to win. Okay, let me do that.
Like the law of attraction is working.
Yeah.
If your life is shitty, then you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
So we have to really work behind it,
Yeah.
and support what needs to change for that law of attraction to be operating forward.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
And operating not over here.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
Operating in that state of oneness.
Yeah. Right.
With everything else. So in our work, when we talk about everything operating in sync,
Yeah, it's the law.
This is what we're working towards, right?
Yeah.
You know, because if our physical system is out of whack and our energetic systems are out of whack and our mental systems are out of whack and we're behaving awfully, we're not going to be operating within, you know.
Right. And then we're not even paying attention to the code that's running the whole shebang.
Yes.
So it's like all jumbled up. So you really kind of do need to know these laws in order to, you know, have
because
that life.
Because there is a code.
Yeah.
It's just like your computer.
Yeah.
Like it has a code and it can be viral.
Right.
And when we're not.
Yeah, all of these laws, like it does talk about, you know, positive and negative. Like it can go either way.
Yeah.
Depending on how you're showing up and interacting.
Your
with them.
choices.
Yeah, your choices.
Right? Because, you know, when we think, like, again, that universal internet that we call source or God, like in that space, it's what you're choosing to interact with.
That's enough for me even to reflect on for this week and try to incorporate that in some of my daily stuff. I know next week we'll come back together and kind of talk about some more of these laws. There's we're on number 5, so we've got up to 12 to go. But we'll just keep talking about these and how you can use them to really, you know, start playing the game. I mean, that's really what it is, I feel like, to me. So
yeah, and if you're you know, if you're struggling, right?
Yeah.
Please reach out. Like healing should not take a lifetime.
Right.
Otherwise you're not healing.
Right.
Right? It's something else. It's another game. Right? You know, healing should have an end.
You know, that's interesting. Even thinking about like healing as far as, you know, when you're calling in healing, it's like maybe you're going to keep getting stuff that happens to you that you got to heal from.
Well, or you're going to keep
Or
finding
you're
stuff,
keep
or you're
finding stuff,
in your manufacturing stuff,
Yeah.
right? Every feeling you have, well, I think that was because of when I was a kid and this happened, right? We need to rectify that and put all the excuses away so that today you can show up real time, right? Because we need you.
Absolutely.
Right? We need you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm super excited that now I know some of the rules to the game that we're playing and the universal laws. So yeah, we'll come back next week and thank y'all for joining us for part 1.
Thanks so much.